Hello and welcome everyone. I'm giving everyone a few seconds to join from the waiting room. This is Sabrina Paganoni and I'm speaking from the Healy Center for ALS. This is our weekly Healy ALS platform trial update. And tonight I'm here, I'm joined by our patient navigation team, Alison Bullat and Catherine Small. So thank you both for participating and thank you, Jesse, who's helping organize the technical aspects of this webinar. So I think people are still joining. So I'll give everyone a few more seconds. I see the numbers continue to rise. So as always, this webinar is recorded. Slides are available. So feel free to invite other people you know who may be interested, as well as please send the recordings or invites to everyone you know. We're here every week because this was actually a request from our patient advisory committee. We have a group of engaged patients who have been helping us with study design from even before we started enrolling in the trial. And one of their requests was to be available to answer questions. And I remember specifically to Sandy Morris, who really made that initial request, and with support from others on the committee. And so we've really been excited to be doing this for the last couple of years. As you can see, the list of groups that supporting the HEALEY ALS platform trial is very large. We have academic centers, academic groups, now 7 companies that have been part or are part of the trial, as well as multiple foundations and patient groups. And of course, as always, we are really thankful to all of you who have been participating in the trial or supporting the trial. Next slide. So as a reminder, the platform trial is a multi-drug trial where we test multiple drugs at the same time, and we also add drugs when they become available. So we continue to grow. But the schema or the overall method for testing each drug is essentially the same. So each drug is called a regimen. A regimen includes active drug and matching placebo. And we randomly assign participants who screen and screen in and are assessed to be safe to participate in the trial. We randomize participants 3-to-1 active to placebo, which means that there are more people on active than people on placebo. And the placebo-controlled period lasts about 24 weeks or 6 months. And that's followed by an open label extension period. I do want to mention that we're changing the nomenclature starting this year for the new regimens. We're going to call this active extension with a better name, I think. It's called active treatment extension to signify that we're continuing participants on active. We're giving everyone the opportunity to try active, and we are comparing the people who started on active early, that's the top group in the graphic, to the people who started on active later. In a way, this is a little bit of a delayed start design as well, where we can gather information not only during the placebo control period, the initial period, but also we continue to gather very important information about safety and efficacy also during the active treatment extension, because again, we're comparing people who started early to people who started 6 months later. Next slide. So in this master protocol, we have a common infrastructure, we have a common house, essentially a common protocol, and also common processes, and an overall design that's essentially very similar when you compare one regimen to the next. And in this house, we can host many regimens or many guests, and each regimen is again one different drug. At this time, we are really working on regimen E in terms of completing enrollment in the randomized placebo-controlled period, which is that initial 6 months of placebo-controlled treatment. And then we are about to start, really we're in startup or design for regimens F and G with 2 new companies, very excited to have them. And they're going to be launching enrollment over the next few weeks, one after the other. So both will be available in 2023. Next slide. So people have been asking us, how do you select the drugs? There's so many drugs in the trial. How do you select the drugs to be evaluated in the platform trial? So first of all, in order to be evaluated in the platform trial, a drug company or investigator, whoever owns the drug, needs to submit a request. for participation. So we continue to meet with industry. We have several conversations with programs, whether they are early in development or almost ready to go. And for whoever is interested in joining, obviously we have ongoing conversations, and then they can submit an actual request. So every drug that's been tested or will be tested is selected by a committee, also known as the Therapy Evaluation Committee, that includes a number of ALS scientists as well as clinicians. And then after a drug has been selected, then the company works with us, with our clinical research team, to then tailor their own regimen to their specific drug. So again, the overall principles are the same, but then each drug can have some specific characteristics in their regimen based on the specific profile of that drug. For example, if they have specific biomarkers, then we will test those biomarkers only in that regimen. If a different drug has a different set of biomarkers, we will test those different biomarkers when relevant. So every drug basically is equivalent from a scientific perspective in terms of the chance of being successful. So we all use the same criteria for all of them, and essentially the criteria include robust preclinical data. That means that there has to be a good scientific rationale. So all of these drugs have been tested in the lab, and their mechanisms of action, their properties seem to be a good fit, at least in the preclinical space, for ALS. And then each one of these drugs has had some previous human experience that may vary depending on the drug. For some drugs, there was previous experience in people living with ALS already in smaller studies. For other drugs, there was previous experience in other neurological diseases. And all this previous experience is important because it supports the dose, the safety, target engagement of the product. And so if the committee, the evaluation committee, feels that there's enough scientific data as well as enough previous human experience, then the drug can be selected to enter the platform trial. Next slide. And so if right now we are still enrolling the last few spots for Regimen E. So if you want to see some examples of sort of, the science behind the drug, we have previous webinars. They are available at these links. So I believe that Catherine can also post the links in the chat. I think we had that question last time, but essentially, if you go on our website, by the way, you can always go back and trace all of these back. But in terms of the QR codes, I will admit that I had to ask Catherine to explain how to use that because I wasn't really sure, but essentially it's you use your camera, and even through the computer screen, if you point to the QR codes using your camera, that will, and then tap on it, then it will bring you to the right link. Catherine, did I say that correctly? Yes. Okay, thank you. So again, these are just examples of also to the science and the mechanism of action of one of the drugs, but sort of similar sessions are available and similar recordings are available for each one of the drug that have been included so far. Next slide. So right now in Regimen E, we are enrolling 60 sites. I would say that our platform trial network is actually a little bit bigger, is over 70 sites. But for this particular regimen, Regimen E, 60 participated because, this was our first intravenous drug, meaning that it would require intravenous injections. And for some sites, there was just not the sort of the structural or infrastructure capabilities for being able to deliver that for various institutional policies or other sort of administrative reasons. So for Regimen E, we operated across a network of 60 sites, but then for F and G, we are actually planning on using all of the sites that are part of the network, again, a little over 70. Next slide. In terms of Regimen E, which is the one that's still enrolling participants, we are now almost 96% enrolled. The target sample size for each regimen is approximately 160. That can vary by, 2 or 3, up and down, depending a little bit on how kind of the last few enrollments go. Right now, we are at 153 out of 160, so we are really close. We just have to enroll the last 7 participants, and we are in close communication with every site. I do want to mention that we are monitoring this on a daily basis, I would say multiple times a day. And I personally and other colleagues have been in direct communication with sites very frequently, and we really hope to include everyone that's in screening right now. We will obviously give you updates, and some people may screen fail, meaning they may not found not to be eligible for the regimen, and then if we have more people than we can assign to E because of drug supply concerns, then we would have regimen F coming down the pipeline very soon. So again, we're really happy that we have more regimens coming down the pipeline. We really hope to include everyone that who is in screening right now for E, but again, we're trying to close this soon, and we have some drug considerations to work with, as we cannot unfortunately enroll many more participants due to drug supply. But again, we have regimen F coming right after. So hopefully all sites are already working on getting regimen F up to online at their site. And so hopefully for new people, there will be lots of new spots. As soon as we open regimen F, there will be plenty of spots available at sites. Next slide. So if you want to learn more about specific topics, we have all these webinars recorded, and some of them are sort of regular weekly updates like this week. But then we have other recordings that are on a specific topic, and so that's indicated on our website. And so thank you, Catherine, for helping sort of list these in a way that's searchable. So if you go on our website again, if for example we recently had last week and 3 weeks ago, we had updates about regimen C. Regimen C is the regimen testing CNM AU8 made by Clean Nanomedicine, and we were fortunate to be joined by Michael Ochkin from Clean and James Barry from our hospital, who have been working closely together on regimen C. And now that that's coming to an end, and a large EAP is being launched, again, they were available to answer questions. So if you have any specific interest on that regimen, also if you are a participant in the regimen that has questions, we have those recordings, but feel free to send us other questions as well. Next slide. And this is our slide about our patient navigation team. Actually, Catherine, Allison, would you want to share anything about how people can get in contact with you?
Sure. So I'll put the email and the phone number in the chat in case it's easier to snag rather than trying to race down the information on the slide here. But people are welcome to email or call us outside of these webinars. So if you have questions about just seeking information about the trial, trying to connect with a trial site, if you're already participating and have a question while the trial is ongoing, we're still a contact point at any point along the way. So I'll put my information in the chat if you ever wanted to reach out with questions beyond these webinars.
Great. And I see the questions are starting to come in. And Catherine, maybe I'll ask if you don't mind, as I take these questions, to post in the chat links to the press releases for regimen F and regimen G when we announced sort of these new two regimens, because some of the questions are actually similar to one another, and they are about what drugs are going to be tested in F or G, the two new regimens. And so first of all, I want to say that I'm happy to take this question today. We are also planning dedicated webinars for these specific drugs, so obviously we will advertise and let you know when those are going to happen. We do have some information that's already being shared by way of public releases when these drugs F and G join the platform respectively. And so for F and G, first of all, one of the questions is when are they supposed to start? So for F, we're targeting February, March, and for G right after in April. So essentially, what happens is that when we start enrolling site by site. So as soon as sites complete their administrative tasks and trainings, they can come online. So once we basically are open for that, then we work closely with sites to help them fill out sort of the administrative paperwork. Different institutions, I would say, have different timelines, and so that has affected sort of the time when a specific hospital can join. So for example, some hospitals have faster administrative departments than others. This is not directly related to the ALS clinic or to our work. It's just how those specific hospitals work in general. And so again, we try to work with everyone. I know our site PIs always try to push their offices to try to be approved as soon as possible. So when we launch the trial, actually, it's not going to be all sites available at the same time. It's going to be sort of sites rolling in on a day by day basis. And actually, Catherine always kindly tracks those on these weekly webinars, and so we continue to keep you posted in terms of which ones are become available as they become available. There's another question about F&G, about whether there will be an EAP for them. I can tell you that we're working closely with the companies on this. Again, no final decisions. We always ask for EAPs, and in fact push for EAPs with every single company, whether they are in the platform trial or in a different trial, standalone trial. We always ask for EAP options, and then again, it's up to the company to decide to do it or not. On occasion, a few companies have internal policies sort of prohibiting EAPs, and so we're trying to work with them, to hopefully revise those policies. But again, this has happened in the past. And so there's a few questions again about F&G, and glad to see that there's a lot of questions and lots of excitement for these new upcoming regimens. But so one specific question is, tell us more about these drugs, and then a related questions is whether they're similar or different. So I want to take that kind of as a whole. So for regimens F and G, we're testing two different drugs. They're made by two different manufacturers, and so they're sort of equally promising, and no specific differences there in terms of the mechanism of action. They do target the same mechanism of action, but again, they are different products. They are targeting a mechanism of action that's interesting in ALS, that lots of people are doing research on. It's called the ISR, also known as the integrated stress response, which is basically a way that cells, all the cells that make up our body, and in particular in the brain, it's a way the cells, it's kind of a mechanism of response to a problem. So if there is a stress, or if there is an insult, some injury, this system gets activated. And so these drugs target that system and try to again regulate that. When this system is sort of overly active, then things can happen, such as toxicity or deposition of abnormal proteins that can then sort of further provide further damage to the cells. And so these drugs are trying to address those. So they both work through the same mechanism, but they are different drugs. And again, we will have dedicated webinars, one for each, when we get a little bit closer, we start. So lots of questions again. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling down to make sure I capture all of them. And thank you, Catherine, for posting information about these drugs. One question that came up is, how come the participants cannot switch sites during the open label extension? So I want to clarify that during the actual trial, it's very hard from a drug management perspective to allow people to switch trials. Also from a data management perspective, I know it sounds like it should be possible. It's just that it's very complicated, and so we have been trying to really restricting that because of the complexities that causes. It's really a problem, especially during the randomized control phase. That's really essentially a no-no due to drug supply procedures, and then even after that, it's sort of difficult to manage due to data kind of in the context of this blinded trial. As we collect the data, it's very hard actually to transfer the data from one side to another. Now, on a different note, when people move on to an expanded access protocol, for example, people who are completing their experience in Regimen E and deciding to move on to an EAP Regimen C, sorry, I misspoke, Regimen C, CNMU8. When people are completing their experience in Regimen C, testing CNMU8, and they decide to join the EAP, then they can actually switch sites. We had Clean Nanomedicine on this webinar last week, and they were very clear on that. Another question that came in is about Regimen D, and I know we're all waiting anxiously about the results of Regimen E. And I can tell you that we're still working on the very final, analysis. I think, I'm pretty sure that this is going to be very soon, but again, I don't have exact timelines because of the amount of data that's being tested. And there's good question that came in about, can you explain how randomization works when there are multiple drugs or multiple regimens at the same time? So for example, right now we're looking in 2023, we are looking at 2 drugs at the same time, F and G. And so how is that gonna work? So the platform trial, the efficiencies of the platform trial are actually gained by having multiple regimens that are ongoing at the same time. We try to always have multiple regimens. We launched with 3, then we had 4, then we went down to 1, and now we're going back to 2. So the fact, because drugs continue to come in, it's hard to perfectly time everything, but ideally we would always have more than 1 drug. 2 or 3 is an ideal number. And so when we have concurrent drugs, we basically assign people who enroll in the trial at that time to any of the available drugs at that time. So for example, in 2023, let's say that you enroll at a site and both F and G are available. And so you will not be able to choose between the 2. Again, those 2 drugs from the point of view of the promising science, they're equivalent, but we just need to test and test each one and see what properties they have. But so people cannot choose which drug to receive, but they're randomly assigned to either one of those. If there are 3 drugs, then it's kind of a third chance. If there are 4, it's 20%, 25% chance of being assigned to any of the drugs. Great. I think that these are all the questions that we have tonight, unless Alison or Catherine, you received anyone. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going over this. I don't think I see other questions. So with that, I'm happy to conclude, and obviously I don't see really any last minute questions. So I think we can conclude and not take too much of your time today, but we certainly look forward to seeing you next week, and we'll be back with more updates. Thank you so much. Thank you.